Hi there, Narinder.
Hi, Georgie.
So, nice to see you.
And you. I'm really humbled to be here today and to be able to actually see you face to face.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's really nice to have you, and we'll just sort of waffle a bit until people join us, and then you can start telling your story and about your book as well. But we'll allow people to join in, and then we'll welcome them when they do. But yeah, we first were in touch. I mean, it was a few years ago now, wasn't it? Around the
Yes.
time.
2020, actually.
2020, yes. Yeah, that's when it
Yeah.
all kicked off, wasn't it?
Well, Dr. Sarno, thankfully, I mean, that book, yeah, it really helped
Yeah,
in terms of knowing where to find other resources.
yeah, that's good. And there's so much more available now than there was in when I began anyway, back in 2007. It was very difficult to find any support then. So it's still, early days, but we're getting there. We're making progress, definitely. So I think what we'll do is we'll get started because this is being recorded, and so everybody will be able to watch it on Facebook or YouTube anyway. And if anybody's watching, please do just pop in the comments box. Just say hello. Let us know where you are. We often have people from all around the world, which is lovely. So I think with you, Narinder, I know it was back, as you say, back in 2020 when we went into a very challenging time, didn't we?
Yes.
And your pain onset was quite sudden, wasn't it?
It was. Well, initially, what I didn't realize is so I had a niggle in my right ankle. I woke up out of bed. My son, he was 7 months old at the time, and I had a toddler daughter, and then we go into lockdown. So that happened February, the niggle, and then March was the lockdown. And what I found interesting was this niggle, it just stayed for a couple of weeks. And my husband was like, why don't you go to the doctors to get it checked out? And I thought nothing of it. I thought, okay. And I'm very reluctant to go to the doctors. I'm very much like, no, if I can sort it out myself. So I went and he didn't check me out. He didn't even ask me how I was. I've got this 7-month-old baby that I've had in the car, in the hospital car park, and pleasant man. And he just said, you may have a herniated disc. Why don't you try walking it off? And recommended physiotherapy.
And you just had a bit of pain in your ankle at that time, niggling
Yeah.
pain in your ankle, but you might have sciatica, prolapsed. Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't think anything of it because it said it in such a calm way, and I thought, okay, walk it off. And so I tried actually. I tried walking while I was waiting for physiotherapy, and then lockdown happened. So my first session with physiotherapy was going to be over Zoom, which for me is unfamiliar territory.
Yes, yes. For many
And
people,
yeah, I mean, it was very, as you will know, it was a bizarre scenario we were facing anyway. I probably had this anxiety within me. And when I had the first Zoom session, it was like, the standard questions of can you bend down to touch your toes? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I had this ego of, yeah, of course I can. And she was recommending like this tennis ball for exercise. And when she went, I think that's when I started getting fearful. So I did this exercise with a tennis ball and I felt the pain exacerbate inside my body, which I didn't know where it was from. I just panicked and just thought, oh my gosh, I can't touch my toes now. And it was the pain when anybody goes through sciatic pain is that pain's horrendous. And that pain doesn't go straight away. And that was the first time where I thought, oh my gosh, what's happened to my body?
Right. Yeah. I just want to say hello to people who've joined us, by the way, Narinder. Do come and say hello. Let us know where you are. We'll just carry on chatting, but then as people have questions, then they can post the questions as well. So it sounds like that fear then triggered more pain.
Definitely. So in a panic, I wanted to get out to her. And the second meeting was, I can't touch my toes. What's going on with me? Hoping she had all the answers. And she had this pleasant lady, but she had this stony looked face as if she'd seen it all before and was like, there's no surgeons available, it's lockdown, and the possibility of surgery. But made surgery sound like it was okay, nothing fearful. And I was like, surgery?
Quite.
I was very taken aback because I didn't know what has actually happened with my back, what's going on.
When we think now about how fear, exacerbates everything, and the first, without having the examination or really any test at all, that first thing to be told you might need surgery. It's ridiculous.
It was, and it wasn't the first time I heard it. So when I heard it this time, I thought, and she said, yeah, it's okay. I was in a panic mode already. So my nervous system was really high now. And I was really like, how am I going to look after my child, my 7-month-old, and whilst the toddler as well in lockdown? And so I kept on doing these exercises that was doing nothing. And I've always heard the phrase of it gets worse before it gets better. And yeah, I only hear this phrase because I used to work in the personal injury sector as a lawyer. So we used to defend cases for whiplash, and I used to act for claimants as well in any type of workplace accident. So I used to see a lot of orthopedic reports. I used to review lots of claimants' medical records. So in my brain, I kept on thinking, okay, I'll give it a go because I don't like to give up and I like to give things a go. But I knew it was getting worse. And I remember I had to desperately find something. So I went on Google, as we do, how to resolve back pain. And Dr. Sarno came up, healing back pain. Ordered it and I read it. I read it within a day and I thought, that's me. Every page is speaking about me. The people pleaser, the subconscious anger, and I thought, where can I go next? And weirdly enough, I was explaining Dr. Sarno to the physiotherapist and she was like, I do agree with you, but I don't as well. So it was like, she knows that there's other ways. And it was when I had a conversation with you, when I found you after reading Dr. Sarno, where you had, said it was a stress-induced symptom. And I really, I hadn't heard that anywhere. Like, it was like there were in between the physiotherapy, I got desperate. So I was looking around for chiropractors as well. And they were locally, there was a McTinmany to normal chiropractors. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to see other people as well at the same time. And everybody kept saying is don't do too much, don't walk a lot, don't jog, all the things that are restricting me. And I felt really low because I give this 6-week time period. And it's when I was speaking to you and you were saying, actually, you will recover. I thought, what does she know that I don't? That's what it felt like. It felt like you had some secret up your sleeve that I didn't know about. And at the time, even though I didn't believe it, I thought that I planted the seed, so to speak, to say, there's something in this that obviously set me on that discovery to really empower myself.
Yeah, and because hope is so important, isn't it? To be given hope, although that in itself could be scary for many people when they've been given hope a number of times and then had it dashed. So at times that can be challenging anyway. I just want to say, Narinder, by the way, hi, Narinder, and others listening in, do say hello and ask any questions that you've got. Sorry, Narinder.
And I think that is it, hope. And when you're by yourself, especially in lockdown scenario, there was nobody like in my family. It's always about go and see the specialist, go, they will help you out, they'll fix you. So it's a natural, we all have that belief where we turn to the professionals for help, but we never seek inside what's happening with us. And I remember
involved in lockdown, and there was so much anxiety during lockdown anyway. And like you say, you couldn't go see your physiotherapist, you couldn't see anybody. So if you're at home on your own with little ones and you're anxious, then no wonder then the fear takes hold and just things go round and round and exacerbates.
And I think that's what was happening. I was so focused on the pain because I hadn't felt pain like that. I hadn't felt like I couldn't walk very much. It was 2 minutes. I couldn't stand for long. I had to brush my teeth on the toilet. Things. I was on the floor days crying, and I was asking my husband, please take me to A&E. And he was like, you're going to be waiting there for hours. And I was pleading. I was like, please give me something. And then I started to think, actually, the call with you just planted something where I go, I have to start researching. And what I did slowly is I cancelled the physiotherapy session and all of that. And the owner of the physiotherapy actually said, this can't be right. You need to come in to see it. And at the time, this is when they were slowly opening up.
Right.
And she was like, no, you need to do more exercises. So there's no surgeons available yet, but surgery. And again, surgery was being mentioned by the owner. And I said, no, but what about my blood flow? What about this? So I kept on getting suggestions. She goes, that's all good and well, but no, you need to go home and do all this. And the 2 days of pain, the pain she put against me against the wall, I was sweating, that pain where it's excruciating pain. And I thought, this can't be right. This cannot be right. So I cancelled. And because you gave me that faith to say, actually, which one do you want to go down? The belief, and having that 100% belief was really crucial. So I cancelled the physiotherapy. And when they said, well, you're at the bottom of the NHS list, I went, that's fine. And I couldn't believe I did that. And again, with the chiropractic, I had a chiropractor who used to have 2 days off for migraines. And I was laughing because I used to go, there's a reason for that. But they were telling me that it happens.
Interesting. So did you find that when you were up against the owner of that physiotherapy practice that you felt that you were the pain was increasing because of the inner turmoil to decide what, even if you weren't aware of it at the time,
Yeah.
do you feel that did the pain ease when you made the decision to let go? And
when I let go of the medical process, it did ease, because
Right.
that anxiety of appointments, the anxiety, there was something that was said as well about the brain needing a diagnosis. I remember that. And I still had that skeptic in me, my brain saying, well, actually, now you've cancelled that, what are you going to do next? And I thought, well, it's going to be painful, but if I can just do some movement, that might help me. And I remember watching videos of yourself with other people of recovery stories, and you had your private Facebook group, and I was vulnerable at this stage. So I reached out in that group thinking, who's going to understand me? And I was so humbled by people just supporting me, saying, well, actually, you're going to do it, like cheerleaders.
Yes.
Which usually,
So
what do you?
group you're mentioning is you'd signed up for the Surfers Online Recovery Program, didn't you?
I did.
We had a Facebook group for people in that. So you then were saying you found support within that group.
It was amazing. So the online recovery, it helped to decipher what was going on with me, like from even childhood, like the timeline, and the videos as well, like just going, oh, actually, I get this, I understand this. And then the private Facebook was just embedded that belief of, actually, there's so many people like me with even worse symptoms. So how can I not recover? It gave me that hope. And again, I didn't feel alone, because that's how I felt. I felt really alone. I felt really low, like really, like I'm broken, and I didn't know a way how to get out. And I think one of the most important things that you were sharing with me as well was reframing the fears, reframing how am I thinking about things. And I thought to myself, one thing was I wasn't going out the house for a couple of months because of my pain. And I thought, I'll have to sit down. I thought, so what if I have to sit down? What can I do? So I used to use like lampposts. So at the end of my clothes, there's a lamppost. Can I get to there? That's okay. I stopped. So I used to sit down on the curb.
Yeah. So really less focus on the pain and about becoming, well, actually the book that you've written about your recovery is called From Pain to Power, isn't it? So you became more empowered and with less focus and less fear related to the pain, which in itself then helped the pain calm down, didn't it?
Definitely. And it took a while, because even people on my close neighbors, people mean well, but they were like, oh, you're walking funny, or my friend, I said, yeah, it's in my hip now. And they used to go, oh, my friend had hip surgery. And then you go to that catastrophizing to the worst case scenario. Oh my gosh, am I and what was unfortunate was my neighbor, she lives opposite me. Her husband he had initially had actually physiotherapy, but he was going through cancer, and unfortunately he passed, but he had it on the spine. And I kept on going to that length of, could this be me? Because my father had died just a couple of years earlier from cancer, and you go to the worst case scenarios, your brain, this is what I find, that the brain can go to the most darkest place if something has happened to you or you've seen something, that I was subconsciously somewhere was going to those lengths.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not surprising when you're stuck alone and you're feeling anxious. When I know you did the online recovery program, you actually joined the Mind Body Wellness webinars that I set up in, I think it was 2020 when we went into lockdown and put on these weekly webinars for people for free. And we had such an overwhelming response. Literally about 500 people signed up, which was wonderful. And I know you did all those, but when you started really exploring things yourself and through these, what were the main things, if you're happy to talk about them, what are the main things you felt had been fueling your pain or triggered your pain, or were in part played a role in your pain coming on and then persisting?
Yeah, but a lot of my personality traits, like being a people pleaser, my adverse childhood experience, I had never even thought about it before, but I remember witnessing my mum have a mental breakdown aged 5. But at that age, I didn't know that it was trauma. I wouldn't even have guessed
No,
that.
of course not.
So for me, I was like, oh, what? Like, it was this revelation of, really, of course. And there was a video I remember once that we don't get that hug that we should have done when we were children, that comfort, that kind of compassion. And then, so going through that trauma and being this people pleaser of, not really saying what I really thought and wanted to please family or friends, and growing up in that way, I think doing the course and listening to stories, you see the similar traits that were happening.
Yes.
And like growing up with a mentally ill mother, it's not easy, because, and it's nobody's fault. It's not her fault. It's not mine, but it's life. But how do you get out of that kind of brain thinking in certain ways with your emotions? And I think that's the biggest thing, the emotional regulation, which I didn't have.
And being able to, I suppose, look back at that time, and you as an adult look back and think, well, that's your life, that's what your childhood was like. But when you actually look at, well, how would you feel if your children went through that? Then you can, I mean, look at your face, it dropped when you mentioned that. When you start to be able to feel it as that and be able to acknowledge and express the emotions, really feeling how you must have felt as a 5-year-old and older as you got older, then that can really help, can't it?
And I think it's important, because I'm not someone who reaches out quite freely. It has to be that desperation. And that's another problem when you don't go to anyone for help, when you don't share your burdens. You're usually the one who soaks up emotion. That's what I'm like. But my energy needed to be conserved, and I didn't realize that until I started doing some of this work and writing the book, that I thought, gosh, actually, give yourself some credit. Have some self-compassion, which I didn't have. I was very hard on myself. And I think just if now with my children, I never wished that. That was another reason why as to why I wanted to recover. I was like, I don't want my children to see me to be this dependent woman or be a victim and say, actually, because we can't deal with a lot of mental stress just as human beings. And if I look back at a big thing that was happening, I was pregnant with my baby and we were moving house. So that was a really big stressful thing happening. I had a lot of anxiety already because of my father having passed 2 years earlier, but I hadn't really dealt with that properly. And so it was like all these life events when, and you share about this, which is what I was learning about, just trying to educate myself is actually, it's okay. These things are going to happen and you're going to be okay. And nobody had ever told me that I was going to be okay, or these are the reasons why certain issues in your life, you're more prone to chronic pain.
Yeah. And I seem to remember you mentioned that you gave birth to your second child in the car, and that you were very angry about that situation and why it had happened. So that would have all played a part as well.
Yes, I was very angry because the midwives had told me I was supposed to have a nice water birth, which I had with neither child. But the second one, I had told them my waters had broken. I'd called them 3 times, and they said, no, stay put. And obviously, I have a high pain threshold. I never knew what it was first time around because I was induced. So second time, I didn't know what to do. And thankfully, my sister-in-law came around. She goes, you need to go to the hospital straight away. I think my husband took the other route of, because the midwives were saying, you just go to sleep now. And, he took it quite literally.
Hang around in the hospital for hours on it. It's just wait here.
And I was praying in the car. Can you imagine? We're like 100 miles per hour. I'm in the back. I'm on all fours in my car. Thankfully, we made it just in time at the hospital because I couldn't get out, and the midwife swooped to catch him, and he was perfectly fine. And I had a blood transfusion 2 days later. I lost a lot of blood as well. But I was angry because, and I did make a complaint actually, which they accepted. They actually changed their whole system of how they worked. But it was the fact of, I had all this anger in me still pestering away that it wasn't going to help me to recover. It was like I had so much in my body that how could I? And I was in denial as well a lot of the time. When you're young, I used to be very active, did a lot of sports. And when I had children, I'd let that all go. Like as a mother, you think, oh, it's okay, I've got all the kids. But what about me? That self-care for me had been neglected.
Yes, and an outlet for you as if you're into sport, that can for many people be a real outlet. Yeah. I just want to say hello to everybody else who's joined us. If you've got any questions at all for Narinder about her recovery or anything related to what we're talking about, then please do post a question in the comments box. Okay, and then of course all this happens and then we're going into lockdown. I mean, what a challenging time. Really difficult.
I couldn't believe my luck that this was happening as well. I mean, I was on maternity leave, and another thing that was happening is I was in a job that I would have had to go back to, that I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled. I mean, as a lawyer, I was coaching in that job, but I knew I love coaching. It was one of the passions I had. I had qualified back in 2015, and it's all, weirdly enough, all about your energy levels and stuff. But obviously I wasn't practicing what I preached. And this job, our values, if they're triggering all the time. And that's where I was at. And I was at a crossroads. I was like, what is happening to me? Questioning. Thankfully, I let go of that job. But it was like, so what do I do now? So that niggle still was in my head where, I thought, Georgie, great. Thank you for all of this information. But what if? And it was like, what if that wasn't going? And the third chiropractor that I saw, well, she didn't see me. She had a consultation with me because I had nerve pain. So I had sciatic pain all the way, coming up all around my body. And she goes, you need to see a neurosurgeon. That she wouldn't see me. She goes, put an ice pack on your back, actually. She did give me this recommendation, but said, put ice pack on your back.
Okay.
And the pain. And I emailed her, and the pain's going, I can't put that on. She goes, oh, I've never seen that before. There was no reassurance, nothing at all. I was in such a state. I remember trembling and going, now what am I doing? She goes, I'll refer you for a neurosurgeon to have a private MRI, because obviously that nothing was around. And I thought, okay, maybe this might give me some answers. And I knew at the same time I was emailing you to say, please give me some reassurance. I also reached out to Stephen Olsenich. I read his book, The Great Pain Deception, and I thought, oh, excellent. And he said, if thousands have recovered, why can't you? Because I was telling you, I was sharing with him. I said, all the gyms are closed. He goes, great. He goes, that being, and I thought, oh, okay. And he set me off actually to do a lot of meditation. I started relaxing my brain with meditation. Joe Dispenza was brilliant for me, and some yoga nidra, which Jeannie Colwyn, she was my coach actually that I had. But it was like, okay, so what else can I do? And I remember when the gym started opening up, I started doing some gentle swimming. And I remember I was still limping. I was still in this period where I was quite bad still. But I went into the swimming pool in the slow lane, and this man had no legs. He's in a wheelchair, and he just dives into the fast lane swimming. And I thought, he's got no legs. And here I am complaining.
Lovely.
And it was a struggle, but when I was in the water, I kid you not, I felt like, oh my gosh, I can do something. Like I'm able, my body's able to be on the water, and I feel so grateful. And I was really grateful I was able to do that. It was a struggle to get out. It was a struggle to get changed. And that was a big fear of mine, just to do that. But I thought, it doesn't matter how long it takes. If I can do it the once, I can start building up my confidence, because it was really low at the time. And, you know, amidst all this that was happening, I shouldn't have been driving, because obviously I was in such a bad way. But I did. I drove actually to my MRI, and I couldn't even lie down on that MRI scanning for 20 minutes, only 10 minutes, because it was so severe, the pain. And I remember the results. No, I remember having a conversation with you, and I thought I thought to myself, maybe I'll get the option of a spinal injection or something, get the pain off. And you were sharing me with the literature. I was looking at the literature, and I was thinking, okay, surgery, is it good or bad? You know, what can I do? And when I had the consultation with the neurosurgeon, there was only one option, and that was surgery. In a half an hour consultation, you know, I was advised, these are the reasons why you've got it, which was genetics, and this is what you're. And
what did they diagnose?
So it's a severe centralized disc prolapse.
Okay.
And the imaging, which I haven't seen to this day actually, because it's on a CD, but it was severe, and this is what I need. And I thought, wow. And given that the consultation was, I've been fit and healthy otherwise apart from this, I was quite surprised. I thought there might be more than one option. I thought maybe that's what would have happened. And that's, weirdly enough, just a week before, I had read Fred Amir's book for the pain recovery. And what I loved about it is how he did a diary. And I thought, I'm going to do a chronic pain tracker where I write little goals for myself, like standing longer than 2 minutes, put an emotion, how do I feel about that? And what reward I would give myself. So I used to do dark chocolate. Midwife always used to say, have a bit of dark chocolate. And I thought, I'll go with it. And I thought, I'll do this. But weirdly, as I was doing that week in, when I had that diagnosis, I thought, I need to do something more than this as well. Now that I've got it, where do I go with this? And that's when I hired a coach from LA. And the only reason I hired one is because this woman, Jeannie Colwyn, actually, so shout out Jeannie, she suffered chronic fatigue syndrome. She had it for years and recovered. And I thought, wow, she's the type of person I want to be. I wanted a lived experience. And, you know, it wasn't so much the coaching. It was like, how much time are you doing for gratitude? How much time are you doing for your journaling? How much time are you doing for yourself? Which was nothing. She called it the goddess hour. Every day. I thought, I'm doing nothing. I'm doing everything for my children. What I could, but nothing for me. So and it was, no word of a lie, a couple of days after the diagnosis, and I couldn't walk very far. I had to stop. It was the longest I'd walked. It must have been about 19, 20 minutes, and I hadn't stopped. And I thought, what? And it was because that literature, the brain needs a diagnosis, was in my head. And I thought, oh my God, is this a miracle? What's going on? And so every day with that, and I think having pockets of time when I was pain-free, when I was enjoying myself, actually really helped. And
really keeping an evidence list of showing that.
She goes, write down a list of the things that are making you heal, proof of healing. So it was like, oh, this is interesting. And it just gave that momentum day after day. I remember when, you know, I listened to Alan Gordon, I downloaded the Curable app and somatic tracking. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And it was really good for me because I was by myself. Like, my husband's had back pain, but not to this level. So I still felt nobody understands until they go into this type of pain, even though the pain is different for everybody. And I never used to sit on a soft sofa, and there was a hard chair in the living room, and I thought, should I sit on the soft sofa? And then I'd let the pain increase, and then it'd plateau.
Yeah, lovely. I just want to say hello to Sophia, and also just sort of you obviously used an awful lot, which is great. Sort of really use the resources, people to help you as well. And looking at the, like you say, what were you benefiting from? What using an evidence list that we really recommend to people. When did you really start feeling that you've made some progress? If anybody got any particular questions to ask, please do ask. But when did you feel that you really did start becoming more empowered in your own recovery and seeing a difference in the levels of pain you were experiencing? How long was that?
I think that was around Christmas. So I had the pain from February, and then it was at Christmas time in 2020. I was still limping, but I started sleeping better, which I hadn't been sleeping. I was sleeping back on the bed, and I'd been sleeping on the floor, which was really awful. Like I'd get up early morning about 4:30 because I couldn't sleep anyway. And I was walking longer. So even though I was limping and felt it, I felt progress. But when you're in it, you don't actually know what's going on because you're writing it, but you're just in the process of it. And yeah, so walking longer, doing the dishes, just little things like being able to stand in a shower, the basic things that I thought, wow, I can do that. And then I started having that momentum. Like I remember I wouldn't talk about pain. I just wouldn't talk about it. And people would still see me physically. Like my sister-in-law came to give presents at Christmas and she goes, "You're limping?" I said, "Oh, I'm fine."
Yeah.
I'm fine.
The less focus there is, the better.
Yeah, I'm fine. And it just, I just kept on doing it day in, day out. Like it was a task for myself to really embed that self-care, having time for me, and making sure that my emotions.
Rather than making yourself, presumably.
And so, but I felt that my emotions were so much better. Like I knew I was calmer. The anxiety, and I know anxiety can come and go all the time, but just to know I was safe, those safe sensations, nothing wrong with me, that it was psychological.
We're using lots of different suggestions that have been made in all the literature, and the programs with your coach, which is wonderful. And there's a lot out there now that you can learn from. Harinder's asked the question. She said, as you went through this during COVID, where you were restricted with the help and support you could get, what do you think you could have done differently to help aid your pain, if anything? I think you did all you could.
Yeah, I think I desperately reached out to everything and everyone. I was reaching out to even people. So I had hypnotherapy one session. I even reached out to people. Actually, they gave me exercises to do. And when you're in this type of pain, you can't do anything. The McKenzie stretches. I had physiotherapists on WhatsApp trying to support me. And it was all really good help. But that wasn't going to work for me because it was a mind-body connection.
I think also what we understand now is that the more you focus on the pain or trying to fix it or fear or fighting it or frustration, these all just cause the pain to persist. This is, so constantly going to physios, osteopaths, chiropractors, or trying to find something to fix you is not going to work. It creates resistance. Whereas when we start to turn inwards and start to notice how we're feeling, start exploring maybe our timeline, starting to be more compassionate towards ourselves, more curious about the pain, then we start letting go. And this is when we start talking about letting go and surrendering. Surrendering doesn't mean, you give up and you're going to be attacked. No, because if you think of surrender in a war zone, for example, you surrender, and what should happen, obviously, many times of the world wars, what should happen is you surrender, and then everything backs down. And with this, it's about letting go of the trying, of the fixing, and being compassionate, taking time for you. So I'm just moving on now. As Sophia says, so true. I was doing all the things you've mentioned, and it just made it persist. Absolutely. Heather. So Heather from Devon. Ooh, what area? That's where more my family is, Heather. What's your top book recommendations with practical tools and tips? All good for self-belief and motivation. Well, do you know what? I'd recommend 2 books here. I would say, the book called Chronic Pain, Your Key to Recovery by Georgie Oldfield is amazing. And the book called From Pain to Power by Narinder Sheena is also amazing. I should have got mine. So I'm going to recommend those books, Heather, even though mine is 10 years out of date now, but still helping people recover.
Well, Georgie, you've done the forward, so that will help as well, because it's knowing the starting point. I mean, the reason I wrote a book is because at the time there was nothing I could see online. Like, even, we've got all these social media platforms. I couldn't see it. Either I was looking the wrong places, but I couldn't see the signposting for that from professionals.
You said you had read mine, Ozanich's. Did you read Alan Gordon's book?
I have now, but I hadn't at the time. At the time, I downloaded the Curable app, and there was another one, Wiki, TMS Wiki, the 21 days. So you could listen to podcasts. So I was listening to the somatic tracking. I started, but there's a fine line of when you go online, not to do too much, because I was finding if I did too much of online, that's all I was thinking about, whereas I needed to go actually take a step back and try and minimize this pain. So even though the pain was it's like a friend, isn't it? So I was accepting it, going, actually, pain's good for me. It's
telling me something.
Yeah, it's protective. If we didn't have pain, we could die from something really, and this whole false alarm that we have on our side. So what I did when I was washing, I remember washing dishes, and I was laughing because the pain was there, but I thought, I'm not going to give in to you. You can be by my side. It should be there. So that the voice of that pain wasn't this big mountain. It started to minimize into like a little dot, I call it. So that if I do have pain, even now, it's okay. Like I can slouch. I don't sit up because I've learned
a fear around it. Yeah.
So the fear, I started to let go of fear and the anxiety. What a really good thing, and I think, Georgie, you recommended this, a good one, was the box breathing, the 4 breaths in. One, yeah. And like Jeannie Colwyn, she's a breathwork instructor, and I did some breathwork actually. And through the belly, oh my gosh, it really just helped. It doesn't mean that the pain goes away, but just knowing that, actually, what's going on with my body? How am I feeling today? Like I could feel my chest tighten, my mouth getting dry. So certain things, I can pick it up straight away now and minimize that time period that I take. But it's not like...
The important thing is that once you really get your head around all this and are not focusing on the pain, but are focused and are able to get out of your head and overanalyzing and ruminating, catastrophizing. Once you get out of your head and into your body and start to notice the sensations in your body more somatically, then you can become much more aware of when you're triggered. I might be triggered a few times every day, but by being aware, it's about, being curious and noticing what's actually going on. That's why we use like the pause, breathe, feel, reassure strategies, to just pause for a moment and go, okay, what's going on here? Calm your breathing down and actually just really notice it. Just feel the sensations in the body and then reassure yourself and then carry on. And that might be all you need if you get a twinge. But the important thing is not just push through. I just got to push through, but actually, okay, this is interesting. What's going on? What's my body telling me? And being compassionate. And so the way I think you said earlier about, being aware of it, but then just saying, no, it's okay, I know you're there, that's fine, and we're going to carry on. That's fine. The one I don't agree with is if people have the pain, they're going, just go away, I don't need you, going to push through this, because I feel like you're not working with the inner parts of you that are needing that support. And therefore doing that with compassion, but also being empowered and going, yeah, okay, do you know what? I haven't got time for this at the moment. So we're going to do this, but I'll come back later. And let's explore this later. Is a very different way of doing it, less resistance towards yourself.
I think that frustration initially, if you've never gone through this type of pain, is like, now what's happened to me? That, naturally you've got this victim state. And then the less you do, like, had I not met you, how about if I was in that predicament of, this is what the professionals and I, they were great, but if I believed all of that, then I went back into, I can't do that, or I can't bend, or I can't. So the words of I can't, I won't, I will never. Then, and I had the thought of my children of being I'm dependent on my family. It was like, no, that I have to change that narrative. I'm changing the narrative that's not the way it's going to be. This is the narrative I can and I will. And attaching emotions, I think one of the things I learned from yourself was the affirmations. Now, I know about affirmations, but I never wrote them out actually. I would do a few of them. I never believed the affirmations, never believed them for a minute. As soon as I started writing down, I am comfortable and I feel amazing when I walk. I am healing and I feel great. So I wrote a couple of affirmations. I looked at it day and night. A couple of weeks later, that's what was happening in terms of that it was in the subconscious. I was doing more and it was just embedding. And I thought, wow, what an amazing, and it was working, the visualization of waking up pain free.
And I think all this is in relation to, there's, I think I've mentioned in the last chat we had, the practitioner chat, about, affirmations. There's a lot of negativity about affirmations. But if you're just using affirmations on their own, and by just this is like sort of stuffing down everything and going, no, but I can do this and I can do that, and I'm wonderful, and I'm whatever. Whereas actually, if you do acknowledge how you're feeling and allow yourself to express, and then to start using those affirmations, even if you don't believe them at the time, if you and especially if you change your posture and you smile and you stand up straight and you just say, I am good enough, or whatever it is, I am good enough. And the more you do that, you're telling yourself that, and it starts just reinforcing that for you.
And it was wonderful to just see that. And I've still kept all my notes that I did, because I did little things. Like obviously journaling was fantastic for me in terms of just getting some knowing about me a lot of the time, because I was and the negative loops that we can have, because our thoughts, we start to believe our thoughts, which aren't true, but they keep looping back. So how can we,
I was just mentioning, you also mentioned visualization, the power of visualization. That's so huge, isn't it?
Well, weirdly, I did an NLP practitioner course back in 2012 with Toby and Kate McCartney in London. And it's all about your subconscious and how to drive through. And I had forgotten all the things I had known. And I thought, why aren't I applying what I already knew? And so I started doing it every morning. I used to go, this is how I used to walk, like sprightly, like what were the sensations? How was I feeling? What was the temperature? So all the kinesthetic ways. And that really drove me on, because I was at a point that I couldn't get out of bed. I was mechanical, putting my hands to the side to get dressed. I used to think, gosh, this is going to take twice as long. And that fear of, can I go on holiday? Can I sit in a car?
But you got past all that.
And then I went,
and as Sophia says, I just want to say, she says, a lot of what you're saying has resonated with her personally. She says, my bulging disc diagnosis came with debilitating pain. I was totally knee bound. I'm not sure what that means. Totally, presumably housebound, and could only mobilize with a Zimmer frame. Wow, I was on so many drugs, had spinal injections, and was looking at surgery until I found a surf practitioner. I think that's Shaheen. Yeah, bedbound. Thanks, Sabir. And the shift in her symptoms was huge. And within 8 weeks, she was out running 5 miles a day and doing all the things that she'd stopped doing due to the fear of pain. That's fantastic, Sabir. And it's so wonderful to hear that transformation. And I know part of your transformation, Narinder, was to write a book, to talk about your recovery, to be able to help other people. And I love the title, From Pain to Power. And you talk about the can-do approach and feeling empowered. And I think your book really gives people that as well, that, really understanding how they can become empowered.
I think pain makes us feel helpless, because you have those self-worth, the lack of self-worth, that guilt, feeling that you're at fault for things. But in reality, if we can start empowering ourselves that we are good enough, that, we do come first, and it's not selfish to think about ourselves. Because if we're not looking after ourselves, how can we look after anybody? And that's where the From Pain to Power, because it's so empowering once you heal. But it also gives you a lesson in life of, can I look after myself better? Yes. And what can I do to help myself? Because it's not just one thing. It can have a knock-on effect on your nutrition, your sleep. Like, I'm quite boring. I try and go to sleep quite early, you know. I love my sleep and I get up and I do a bit of work on my treadmill. I have a treadmill, I have some weights. And that power of strengthening my body, I feel, you know, like until you've gone through, I don't think people understand that power isn't like an ego boosting, but it's more so I'm in control, I'm independent.
Yeah.
But if I do need help, there is help. To surround yourself with people who are compassionate and kind. Not everyone's going to be your cheerleader. Definitely.
No, absolutely. And learning who to listen to and to spend time with people who are enriching you, rather than draining you. So I think,
that's half the problem, though, because if you've got family members, for example, siblings or things like that, and you can't cut away from them, and they are the negative draining type, you know, how do you do that? But it's about conserving that energy to say, actually, that's not benefiting me.
No, absolutely. And yes, it's having boundaries, spending, you know, who you spend your time with, as well as other boundaries as well. And as Narinder says, it's a really amazing read. It's an incredible read, and I'm sure it's going to benefit many people. We'll definitely put a link underneath the video to make sure people can purchase the book. And if anybody's got any final questions, please do ask, because we're coming to an end now. But is there anything else that you'd like to say? Anything that could inspire anybody listening?
Yeah, I would say to people who are suffering right now is to reach out. Like, I run a free pain cafe locally in the community.
Pain cafe. Not that everybody can get there, but where's yours?
It's in Bromsgrove at the Wellbeing Tree in Worcestershire.
Right.
And I set this up because I thought I would have loved this support. And I was doing a few workshops before, and one lady who became my client, she goes, I've been everywhere, medically exhausted the system, and you have just helped me transform my life. And she's over 70% pain-free after 12 years of back pain. But what I do is I have a morning and evening session, and I try and bring in experts. Like, I had a nutritionist last month for free, so that it's accessible to anybody to come who's suffering from anxiety chronically, even depression, to people who are socially isolated and any chronic condition. And what I try and do is bring different experts, because I don't want to just hear my voice. I'm there to support individuals as a coach and understanding the chronic pain. But how about they want further support from other practitioners? You know, there could be physiotherapists or chiropractors who want to come in and you want to understand and learn more about the body, which we don't tend to do. All we want to do is get recovery. But actually, if we start to understand in a safe environment, then that's a place that I've set up. And I'd love that, where people can do that. Look online for any, cafes. There's lots going on down south. I know Sean Jennings does it. And in Sheffield, we've got a couple of Soul Can Socialise and pain cafes being run. So my vision is, in the future, hopefully we'll get these around the country, that we can take that pressure off the NHS as well. That will have people empowering themselves, empowering each other with peer-to-peer support as well.
Fantastic. That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Narinder. I know this book is going to help so many people. And thank you for listening in as well. As you know, it's being recorded, so people can listen to this on YouTube and Facebook as well after this. But thank you for your time, Narinder, and thank you for your book.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.